It's 2021 and believe it or not, people are still playing Game Boys. But not just that, a company called BoxyPixel has gone one step further and completely redesigned the Game Boy as we know it to make a modern, high-quality, machined aluminium device which features USB-C charging, an IPS display, and all in a design that we have never seen before. But at what cost?
A small mortgage.
How do we build it?
With great difficulty.
What skill level is required?
A NASA engineer.
And is it really necessary? Let's find out. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Elliot and welcome to the Retro Future. We finally have the Unhinged Game Boy SP and I am so damn excited. This thing is beautiful. No matter what we're going to look at in this, the pros, the cons, the rest of it, it is undeniably the most beautiful Game Boy that exists. I can say that with confidence. It's definitely my opinion, but I'm fairly certain it's just factual at this point. Look at it. It's just absolutely stunning. Because this is a Game Boy Advance SP, there's this very weird thing going on where we've got a Game Boy Pocket or DMG or color-styled Game Boy, but with this nice big screen, and it's obviously playing Game Boy Advance games, and that is not a form factor that we've ever seen before. Obviously with the Game Boy Color, you have got that form factor and that layout, but you know, what this can do is fairly limited, and it's definitely not got a nice wide screen. It's got the, you know, the small square screen for the Game Boy Color and Game Boy games. So it's a very beautiful thing. It's quite strange to look at. It's going to take a bit of getting used to because it just looks so new. It's such a new thing to be looking at, but it is absolutely beautiful. Now, before we go into it, I want to just actually talk about what it is here that BoxyPixel has done, in case there's anybody here who's never heard of BoxyPixel before. What he's selling here is the shell, which he's made. It's something that he's designed, and then he gets CNC machined out of aluminium, a very, very high grade aluminium. These things are not inexpensive. As you can imagine, they're quite expensive. The shell itself is $94 US. And the costs do not end there. What Nick has not done, although obviously it is featured in this and it is the only one that you can use, you can't use your original one. This features the IPS screen, the funny playing IPS screen, which is something that has been out now for a little while. It's a very beautiful screen. You get a nice brightness, crisp viewing angles, very sharp, a very high resolution. Everything looks stunning. And yeah, but he's not pioneered that. That has been around for a while, and you can do that mod to your existing Game Boy Advance SP, scratched, beat up, whatever. It doesn't matter. You just cut up the shell, slam it in, and it's going to set you back around $50 or about £40, depending on where you buy it from. What I'm trying to say is this isn't necessarily a box of pioneered new things that we've never seen before. What this allows you to do is pretty much drop all of those things in to a completely new form factor that we've never seen before. You could build this yourself if you have some poly filler and a lot of patience and you're quite skilled with paintwork. You could make yourself an unhinged Game Boy. It's obviously fairly simple. You just have to remove the hinge and then glue the screen to the top, and you're going to have pretty much the same thing. But that's not the point, is it? This is an aluminium Game Boy Advance SP, or an aluminum, and we've not seen that before. It is a very new thing and it's very unique. So as I said, the shell itself is $94, and that allows you to take all of these things which are the most desirable Game Boy Advance SP mods, the screen, the improved battery, the USB-C charging, and the headphone jack, and it puts it into this. You do unfortunately need quite a few other things as well as that. So let's just go through this really quickly. We've got the Game Boy itself, one of these little guys, that's going to cost you around $50 wherever you're going to get it from. It could be even more. From this, you are going to need a few things. You need the L and R shoulder buttons. You need the little cartridge shield that goes on in there. You need the light tube. You need the membranes. You also need the battery, unless you're going to buy one of his batteries. And I think that's about it. So you are still going to need quite a few things, and the speaker, also the power switch and the volume slider. You're going to need those as well. So you need a lot of things from the Game Boys. You can't just go out and buy a motherboard, unfortunately. You do have to pick up one of those. So that's going to be 50. We've got a screen in here that's going to be 50. We're at 100 already. The shell is, let's just call it 100. It's $94, but let's just call it 100. We're at $200. You have to use his metal buttons, which are obviously stunning and are going to improve the overall feel of this device. But they're another $21. But all in, we're probably at around $250 so far. And if you want to add the things like the USB-C and the headphone jack, they are additional. They're going to cost you more. So you have to buy his rechargeable board, which is only $2 to be fair. That's a very good price. The battery, that's $10. You then have to have the skill to be able to solder those things together. If you don't have that skill, then you can just buy the shell, the screen, and the SP, and you can pretty much assemble everything without soldering anything. There is one wire for the screen though, which allows you to have the additional brightness functionality, but if you don't know how to solder and you are afraid to risk it, you can build this whole thing with just your screwdriver set. So that's quite a nice thing. And also, I know this is information overload. In the past, he has actually done pre-built kits, which are basically you just buy the Game Boy and it's going to come down. I'm sure there'll be a bit of warranty with that as well. It's all pre-built, spec'd out, whatever you want. And it's, yeah, that is something that he does do, but not currently with this Unhinged SP. You don't need the USB-C rechargeable mod. You can actually, even with the USB-C, still charge through the regular charging port. That's not going to remove that functionality, but it kind of makes you wonder why we're even adding it in the first place. I know a lot of people just want USB-C. It's quite cool to have USB-C, the most modern charging sort of technology on a Game Boy. I can totally see why that is a desirable thing. And yeah, obviously he's made that available to the people who want that. The headphone jack as well. You don't need the headphone jack. You can get one of those little dongles, chuck that in the back, and you're going to have a headphone jack. But those things are in there because people want them. And if you're going to go through the motions of designing an entire new shell to cater for these mods, you might as well cater to that community who want those more in-depth things which require more skill to put them together. If you don't want either of those things, for $3 each, he sells little plugs that will just fill up those holes, so you're not going to have blank holes there. $3 is a pretty reasonable amount of money to think it's a tiny little aluminium thing that he still had to machine. It's not something that's just 3D printed. I should also mention, if you don't use his USB-C upgraded battery mod, you're going to need to buy a 3D printed bracket that will hold the original Game Boy battery in the back, and that's going to set you back $4.20, lol. So let's not waffle on any longer. This is the BoxyPixel Unhinged Game Boy Advance SP. It has the most amazing weight to it. It really does feel like it's just a solid block of metal, but then obviously you know that there's just a bunch of cool things going on inside it. The USB-C charging works very well. Let's not really talk about that anymore. The headphone jack works very well. It's very nice to be able to listen to the stereo audio coming out of your Game Boy Advance SP, because otherwise you've only got the mono speaker on the front. So that is a nice thing. The screen is beautiful. It is just the most gorgeous screen in the world, and the difference between that and an AGS 101 is just night and day. It adds additional brightness, there's sharper colors, sharper image. It's just so stunning, and it really feels like if a Game Boy was made today, this is exactly what it would look like. The overall actual design hasn't really been removed too much. Like the layout, obviously, it has to sort of coincide with the buttons on the PCB below. So everything does look fairly similar. It is smaller, it's definitely shorter. It's not just the same as having an opened up Game Boy Advance SP. It's a little bit thicker. You can understand why there's metal instead of plastic, but the top is actually still very thin, and he's been able to do that because the IPS screen itself is an incredibly thin panel, so that is quite nice. The actual feel of the buttons has changed a lot. These buttons are thicker than these in their actual form factor, but when they're in there, there's not extra travel. Which is a really good thing. You know, they're not spongier or anything like that. They just have to be taller in order to penetrate the thickness of the metal. So it feels very, very nice. There's a much more sort of tactile sort of feel to the buttons just because it's a metal on metal, but it doesn't feel like a nasty metal on metal. It just feels like a high quality metal on metal. So yeah, I mean, just look at it. It's just such a beautiful thing. Obviously, there is benefits to having the clamshell design. Keep the screen protected, make it smaller, chuck it in your pocket. The top is going to get battered, and so is the bottom. But that is the whole point of these Game Boys. They were obviously made at a younger demographic where that was going to be a threat, you know, chucking it in a bag, getting the screen damaged or whatever. So it was nice at the time, but now it's actually not so important. If you're going to be spending this amount of money on a Game Boy, you are going to be very careful with it. You're not going to just be chucking it around. It doesn't come with a case, but I'm sure there are many, many different hard cases, zip-up ones for hard drives or phones or whatever that you can get and keep it nice and protected. So it is obviously more open and exposed, but now we do have things like a glass screen lens, whereas this one was plastic. So I suppose it swings and roundabouts. It's a nicer form factor, but it is slightly scarier than having a hinge. Now, your Game Boy and Game Boy Color games are still going to work, which is actually very nice, because one of the things I really like about the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Pocket is the form factor. So now we've still got the exact same form factor, except we can also play your Game Boy Advance games in it. So that's a very nice thing. It is going to stick out, but you can't blame BoxyPixel for that because it did that on the original Game Boy. So unless he was going to make it extremely elongated, which I'm all for, yeah, unfortunately it is going to stick out. Now, one thing that does suck, and I unfortunately experienced this problem firsthand, so I'm telling you now, Mole Mania, a very nice rare game, I plugged that in and it scratched the shell because obviously you're plugging plastic into metal. So that's a very unfortunate thing. You could get around that with a multi-cart or a flash cart, but be my guest, you do what you want to do. It just kind of sucks that your original cartridges are potentially liable to getting scratched. I haven't had the same problem with Game Boy Advance games, and also if you're just really careful with them, they are going to be perfectly fine. It's just something worth noting. Okay, so there we go. I mean, that is pretty much everything for this BoxyPixel Game Boy in terms of its price breakdown and review. The one thing that you might notice is I'm not assembling mine. BoxyPixel sent me their one pre-built, which is very kind of them. They've also obviously done the work for me, which is very complex. Kind of sucks though, because I really would have liked to have gone through and actually done a assembly tutorial on this, but yeah, I can't. One thing I will show you though, which is very cool, he really has thought of everything, is there is an option to add wireless charging. It really could be the most specced out Game Boy in all of the lands. He's left a slot there if you wish to have that in there, which is very cool. And obviously this plate is incredibly thin, so that isn't really, I don't believe, I'm not an expert with wireless charging, I don't think that's going to interrupt it. So to get to my final thoughts then, this has obviously been sent to me for free, so take this as you will. It is the nicest Game Boy I've ever looked at, I've ever experienced, I've ever owned, and I've ever had in my hands. That is, yeah, you'll have to just believe me when I say that. It is the most beautiful thing ever. One thing that Nick forgot, or whoever put this together, is the light tube for the LEDs. That does suck. Maybe I'll endure opening it in the future to add that, because I kind of want it in there, because you're kind of looking down there like, is it on? But yeah, so my final thoughts are, I love it a lot. It's very, very beautiful. It is not something that I would buy if I wasn't a YouTuber. And that's for the simple fact that I can't afford it. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be the same as that. What I would like them to do, which would be amazing, and if they can figure out a way to do it, please do it. Make a plastic one. Make a plastic one. Make it a quarter of the price or half the price if that's possible. Make them in a wide variety of different colors. One of the things that Nick has offered, BoxyPixel have offered on their website in the past, is anodizing the metal for you so that you can have a different color. Make a plastic one if that's possible. I think you're gonna sell far more of them because you're gonna be able to make them a lot more affordable. And I would really, really like a plastic one as well. And definitely something that I think if they did do, there's a huge market for, because not everyone can afford to spend this much money on a Game Boy. I think I've waffled on for long enough now. I really hope you have enjoyed this video. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much to them for sending it to me. And yeah, I'll catch you all in the next one. Goodbye.